The internet can be a great source of information and entertainment, but it is also always a threat to a person's safety. Today we will tell you how a simple desire to find a romantic partner can turn into a living nightmare from which it is nearly impossible to wake up. This story took place in Omaha, Nebraska, not far from the border with Iowa. 34-year-old Dave Kropa moved there in 2012 to take over the management of an auto repair shop that he had recently inherited. Shortly before that, he had separated from his wife, Amy Flora. They had 2 children together, and for their sake, the parents maintained a good relationship, communicated well, and saw each other often. Dave was trying to find a new woman for romantic relationships, so he created accounts on several dating websites. He was friendly, sociable, and easygoing. So many women wanted to get to know him and start a relationship. At that time, Dave was not looking for anything serious or long-term, but he was open to pleasant company with women. One autumn day in 2012, Carrie Farver visited Dave's auto shop for routine maintenance on her vehicle. She was a 37-year-old single mother, and she had a 14-year-old son who was already a young programmer. Dave met her gaze and was instantly smitten. He asked her out, but she declined the invitation, saying he was not her type. However, Dave was so drawn to the woman that he decided to get her attention anyway. Later, he found her online and sent her a message. She didn't respond right away, but after some time she wrote back, and they began to communicate occasionally. Later, she again brought her car in for repairs, and they had another pleasant conversation. This time Dave invited her to dinner again, and she agreed. Carrie was a very cheerful, independent, and energetic woman. In school, she was one of the top students, and teachers believed she had a bright future ahead. Carrie was close to her mother, friends, and acquaintances. She always smiled and never gave up, no matter what. Her life changed dramatically when she became pregnant at 22. Her boyfriend was not happy about the news and refused to participate in raising the child. But Carrie was not discouraged. She immediately decided she would keep the baby and raise him alone, without relying on men. She temporarily left university and got a job. Carrie settled in an apartment near her mother Nancy's home, gave birth, finished university, and eventually found a higher-paying job in IT. Motherhood came naturally to her, and she and her son lacked nothing. By the time of the events described, her whole life was dedicated to her son Max. She was no longer trying to start relationships and lived entirely for her child. Soon, she and Dave went on their first date. Carrie was thrilled with the evening and with him. Later, she admitted to a friend on social media that she hadn't laughed so hard in years as she had on that date. Their communication was easy and natural, as if they had known each other for many years, so Carrie was ready to continue the relationship. Dave also wanted something romantic with Carrie. He really liked her and was practically falling in love. He even stopped talking to other women on dating sites because of her. However, there was another woman in Dave's life, Shauna Elizabeth Collier. She was one of the first women he met online after his separation. She was 38 years old and used the nickname Liz on dating sites. Dave considered her sweet and cheerful, and the two of them had children of similar ages. She claimed she also wanted a casual relationship. Liz owned a small business and managed her household. They hit it off immediately and had been seeing each other regularly for the past 6 months, maintaining a sexual relationship. But over time, Liz became extremely clingy. She wanted to spend more and more time with Dave, who valued his independence and continued speaking with other women. Because of this mismatch, their relationship deteriorated and Dave distanced himself. But Liz continued forcing her way into his life. She constantly gave him unsolicited advice, which irritated him. Liz knew he had been going on dates with different women before Carrie, and she expressed jealousy about every single one of them. To get some distance from her, Dave suggested she try dating other men, but she refused and even deleted her dating profile in a dramatic gesture. She grew jealous of other women, of Carrie, and even of Dave's children and ex-wife, so he had to put boundaries in place again and again. During one of Dave's dates with Carrie, he noticed several missed calls and messages. It was the persistent Liz. She demanded that he immediately let her into his apartment because she had supposedly forgotten something inside after her last visit. She insisted aggressively. Dave responded that he was on a date with someone he cared about and could not let her in right now, but would do so later when he got home. But Liz kept pressuring him and insisted she had to retrieve her things right away. Eventually, Dave agreed. He and Carrie drove to his place, and before they could even step inside, Liz showed up immediately and began banging on the door, yelling and demanding to be let in. She was furious. Naturally, this ruined the romantic evening, but understanding, Carrie suggested that Dave settle the matter with his neighbor and that she and Dave go to her place instead, where no one would disturb them. Dave did exactly that. He handed Liz her things, and he and Carrie left. As they were leaving, the two women briefly made eye contact, just for a second. But that moment would change their lives forever. The couple then drove to Carrie's home in Macedonia, Iowa. The ride took about an hour. The next morning, Carrie told Dave that she was perfectly satisfied with the current format of their relationship. She did not want anything serious, no marriage, no more children, and she also admitted she could not have children, just like Dave. Carrie wanted only pleasant companionship. This brought them even closer. Their preferences and views on relationships aligned completely, and it greatly accelerated the development of their romance. For the next 2 weeks, they saw each other every day. Carrie worked only a few blocks away from Dave's home and auto shop, though she lived in another town across the state line. It was convenient for her to stop by during the day to have lunch or spend some time with him. She often stayed overnight. Carrie had a well-paid job and held one of the key positions at a large IT company. She dedicated most of her time to work and to her son, and only a small portion of it she was willing to spend on dating and fun. All of this perfectly matched Dave's plans for life. Although Dave was beginning to wonder whether he should reconsider his main rule and move in with Carrie. In early November, while she was at Dave's place, Carrie received several friend requests on social media from people she didn't know. One of them was from her hometown, Macedonia. She messaged the person asking, "Do we know each other?" but never received a reply. Carrie mentioned this to Dave, but they both dismissed it as nothing unusual. On November 13th, 2012, Dave woke up early and found Carrie working on her laptop, adding the final touches to a new project she was scheduled to present to her supervisors later that day. Dave kissed his girlfriend goodbye and left. They planned to meet again that evening. While at work, Dave received a message from Carrie asking whether he would like to move in with her. This shocked Dave. Just days earlier, they had discussed this topic and agreed they did not plan to live together as a family, preferring to simply spend time together occasionally. He also found the sudden proposal strange. Although he had considered the idea himself, he disliked when someone pressured him. So he politely declined and reminded her of their earlier agreement. In response, he received a flood of angry messages filled with insults. She sounded hysterical, furious, and hateful. The tone was completely unlike the woman he knew. It seemed that their relationship had ended instantly. Dave was stunned by her words. He cut off contact completely and went home after work. Carrie's belongings were no longer there. It appeared she had accepted the breakup and collected all her things. A few days later, police officers showed up at Dave's auto shop. They informed him that his girlfriend, Carrie Farver, was missing, and he was the last person to see her alive that morning after kissing her goodbye. She never showed up at work that day, and no one had heard from her since. Dave told the officers he had no idea what happened and showed them their last text exchange. He explained how unusually rude and aggressive Carrie had been that day, completely unlike herself, and how he had broken things off. Detectives began talking to Carrie's family and were able to reconstruct part of that day. On the morning of November 13th, Dave left the house after kissing Carrie goodbye, and she was preparing for work. Later, Carrie's mother received a frightening message saying that her daughter had broken up with her boyfriend and had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital after a nervous breakdown. Terrified, her mother panicked and tried to find her at local facilities but couldn't locate her anywhere. Meanwhile, Carrie did not show up for work on the very day she was supposed to present a major project. That was extremely alarming. Later, her employer received a message saying she had taken a new job in Kansas and would not be returning. This was shocking. Carrie valued her job enormously. Her son, Max, also received a message saying she was going to attend his brother's wedding. But the wedding had already taken place, without her. None of these messages made sense. Her family, friends, and co-workers were increasingly worried. The messages contradicted each other and did not align with the woman they knew. No one believed Carrie would abandon her son or suddenly move to another state because of work. Something was clearly wrong. Either Carrie was hiding something, or she was in trouble. The family met and decided to file a missing person report. Dave was completely bewildered by everything happening. He voluntarily gave police full access to his car and phone. He cooperated fully and tried to help with the search. Dave explained that he and Carrie had only been dating for a few weeks, but they had become very close. Carrie had always been calm and polite, which made her sudden aggressive messages even more confusing. Before long, he was being bombarded with horrible messages, insults and threats from anonymous accounts on social media. The sender relentlessly attacked Dave, especially targeting his neighbor, Liz. The number of messages reached up to 60 a day, coming from countless accounts. Every person who knew Dave began receiving the same, threatening messages. Dave reported the harassment to the police. One woman he had dated before meeting Carrie told detectives she experienced the same thing. After their first date, she was flooded with messages threatening to kill her children if she ever saw Dave again. Terrified, she stopped seeing him. Then things became even worse. Everyone who knew Dave began receiving messages saying he was an abuser who beat women. These accusations spread everywhere, even on dating websites. Soon Dave was inundated with hateful messages from strangers. He had to constantly explain himself and insist that the allegations were lies with no evidence. Dave's life became a nightmare. People avoided him, his business suffered, and many despised him. Meanwhile, Carrie had been missing for more than 3 weeks. The police were unable to track her movements, her mobile phone, or her car. There were no transactions on her bank card. Everything suggested that she was dead. It was necessary to find her body and figure out what had happened, because her family needed answers. Meanwhile, Dave was still being terrorized and was forced to contact the police again. But law enforcement was deeply involved in the missing persons case and had no resources left to help him, so they showed little interest in his story about suspicious messages. In January 2013, Dave accidentally spotted a Ford Explorer that belonged to Carrie in the parking lot of an apartment complex. The car was empty. He immediately informed the police, who arrived to inspect it. There was a scratch on one side, but no fingerprints on the exterior or the steering wheel. Strangely, there were no fingerprints at all on the steering wheel, not even Carrie's, as if someone had deliberately wiped them off. They did find one fingerprint on a tin of mints inside the car, but when they checked the print through the national database, there were no matches, and it did not belong to Carrie. The car was unusually clean, except for a small pink stain on the passenger seat that resembled a spilled strawberry milkshake. After the inspection, the vehicle was returned to Carrie's parents, who later sold it. Meanwhile, the threats against Dave were becoming more sinister. He received photos of his windows with captions saying the sender had a spare key and would soon enter and stab him in the heart. He also received pictures of his children with threats. Later, the stalker began threatening violence against his neighbor Liz. One day, Dave received a photo of a woman who looked very much like Liz tied up in the trunk of a car. Panicked, he called Liz to make sure she was safe, and she was at home. Moments like this made him want to believe it was just a horrible prank, and he kept hoping it would all end like a bad dream. This terrifying situation drew him closer to Liz, who was also being harassed by the stalker pretending to be Carrie. The messages accused Liz of ruining Carrie and Dave's relationship, and implied she was helping the police investigate Carrie. Dave and Liz began talking more frequently, sharing their fears and frustrations. Often they would be watching a movie together when both their phones would buzz at the same time with new threats and insults. After receiving several threatening photos of himself and his children, Dave went back to the police. But when he filed a report about online harassment and stalking, detectives simply shrugged. It was clear no one intended to take on his case. Desperate, Dave contacted a special cybercrime unit in Omaha. But that department had only a single specialist, someone who was already juggling 94 cases at once, and therefore physically unable to help him. Dave realized he had no choice but to endure the harassment and keep going. He started to suspect that Carrie had run away during a bipolar episode and was now tormenting him and others. But there was no proof. Carrie's father passed away. Her family grew increasingly alarmed when she failed to attend the funeral. Instead, they received a text message with her apologies. But no one had heard her voice for months. Carrie's family understood. Something was terribly wrong, and those messages were not from her. In the spring of 2013, a man called Carrie's mother, claiming to be Dave Kropa. He said Carrie had contacted him and told him she was at a homeless shelter in Omaha and needed someone to pick her up. Overjoyed, Carrie's parents contacted the police and rushed to the shelter. But Carrie wasn't there and had never been there at all. The caller was not Dave, and the entire incident was a cruel hoax. Soon after, Carrie's parents obtained legal guardianship of her son, who had been living with them the entire time. Meanwhile, Dave's on-again, off-again relationship with Liz became increasingly unstable. For several months, they constantly broke up and made up. Liz grew more obsessive and refused to leave him alone. Dave noticed that every time he tried to break up with her, the threatening messages from Carrie suddenly intensified. It felt like too much of a coincidence, but he assumed someone was simply watching them. They finally broke up for good in August 2013 because Dave refused to pursue a serious relationship. Shortly afterward, Liz's garage was vandalized and covered with offensive messages about her. A few days later, Dave learned that Liz's rental house had caught fire. The fire wasn't severe, and firefighters managed to save the structure, but it required repairs. Tragically, the family pets, 2 dogs, a cat, and a snake, died in the flames. Liz and her 2 children temporarily moved in with relatives. Liz told the police that Carrie had set the fire, claiming her threats had escalated into real action. In this version of events, the stalker admitted responsibility for the garage break-in and the arson. Then Dave received another strange message, signed Carrie. This time, the sender claimed she was pregnant with his child. Dave immediately knew it was impossible. He had had a vasectomy years earlier and couldn't have children. He also knew Carrie had undergone a hysterectomy, making pregnancy impossible for her as well. The message made him doubt whether the person messaging him was truly Carrie at all. 2 months later, graffiti appeared on Dave's auto shop. Dave beats women. In January 2014, an old female friend came to visit Dave. That night, only a few hours after they went to bed, someone threw a brick through the bathroom window. By that point, Dave's nerves were completely shattered. He realized the situation had spiraled out of control and had become dangerous. Since the police were doing nothing, Dave walked away from everything. He moved to a new house, changed jobs, switched phone numbers and all contact details, and bought a firearm for protection. He essentially disappeared from view and stopped communicating with anyone. But eventually, his biggest weakness resurfaced. He returned to online dating under a different name. He arranged a date with a new woman, but she never showed up. Instead, he received a threatening message from Carrie. The same message had been sent to the woman he was supposed to meet, which explained why she didn't come. Liz also received an angry message, an email from someone calling herself Amy Flora, the name of Dave's ex-wife. Liz then suggested that it might be Dave's ex-wife who was the stalker pretending to be the missing woman and terrorizing him and everyone around him for more than 3 years. Since Liz herself could no longer reach Dave directly, she took this information to the police and filed a stalking complaint. The theory seemed plausible. Amy did, in fact, have enough reasons to hold a grudge against her ex-husband after the divorce. Around the same time, Dave's pistol mysteriously disappeared from his home, which meant that someone had been inside and he might be in real danger. He reported this to the police because the situation was once again getting out of control. After all these incidents, the police finally decided to take a closer look at the stalking situation. Naturally, they were most interested in whether it was connected to the missing Carrie. A second interview with Dave confirmed that he truly had nothing to do with her disappearance. As detectives obtained more details, they began to doubt that the missing woman was the one threatening her boyfriend and others. They could not understand why someone who had dated Dave for only about 2 weeks would destroy her own life, abandon her family, her home, and her successful career just to stalk him for years. It made absolutely no sense. It seemed more likely that someone had simply stolen her identity and was using it to harass others. On December 5, 2015, Liz Gollier, the former neighbor who had been stalked alongside Dave, called 911. She reported that she had been attacked while walking home late at night through a park. Liz said she saw a shadow appear in the darkness. Then someone grabbed her from behind and asked whether she liked Dave. Moments later, a gunshot rang out. Liz managed to see her attacker. It was a woman who looked like Amy Flora, Dave's ex-wife. The attacker shot her in the leg and disappeared into the night. Thankfully, Liz's injury was minor, and she was taken to the hospital. The police later spoke to Amy and visited her home to investigate. They needed to determine whether she could be charged and whether the shooter was really her. But Amy denied everything. During the conversation, police learned that she too had been receiving numerous threats from an unknown woman. According to Amy, she had recently begun communicating more frequently with Dave again, and was immediately bombarded with aggressive messages warning her to stay away from him. Amy allowed officers to search her house. They found nothing suspicious. She also had a solid alibi at the time of the attack on Liz. Detectives verified the threats Amy had received and confirmed her alibi, so they removed her from the list of suspects. But Liz continued insisting that Amy was her attacker. She could not, however, explain how, in the darkness and while terrified, she managed to clearly see the shooter's face, something no one believed. To support her claim, Liz brought printed emails supposedly sent by Amy, including a confession. The message contained extremely detailed information about Carrie's alleged abduction on the morning of November 13, 2012. Carrie had logged into her social media account at 6:45 a.m., and then again 3 hours later to remove Dave from her friends list. According to the confession, this was the time Amy abducted Carrie. The author of the message accurately described Carrie's tattoos, including one never mentioned in any missing person bulletin. The message claimed that Carrie had been stabbed in the stomach or chest, then burned beyond recognition and dumped in a trash bin. It also mentioned details about Carrie's car and home that had never been made public. This convinced detectives that whoever wrote the message had actually seen her body, and that Carrie had likely been killed more than 3 years earlier. But the police did not believe Amy had written the message, nor that she would ever confess to murder using her own name. The whole thing looked like an amateur attempt at staging evidence. Detectives grew increasingly suspicious of Liz Gollier, who had provided the printed email. A forensic review of her phone revealed deleted information. She had been using apps designed to disguise her location, making it difficult to trace where messages were actually sent from. Another app she used allowed delayed message sending, which explained how she could receive messages from Carrie, even when she was with Dave. At this point, Carrie's mother, Nancy, became involved in the investigation. She told police that the messages she and other relatives received after Carrie's disappearance did not match her daughter's writing style. The grammar and tone were wrong. Carrie had always written in articulate, polite, and well-structured sentences. Nancy also provided detectives with a check issued for the transport of Carrie's furniture, supposedly sold by Carrie herself after her disappearance. But the check was made out of Shauna E. Gollier. Investigators also learned that Carrie's supervisor had received her resignation letter, in which she stated that a friend would be applying for her position, and that friend was listed as Shauna Gollier. Liz indeed applied for the job, but she did not meet even the minimum qualifications for such a position and was rejected. The case was becoming more convoluted by the day. But one thing was clear: Carrie would never have recommended Liz for her job, nor would she have entrusted Liz with handling her property or money. Something was profoundly wrong. It became apparent that Liz had completely lost her mind over Dave. She had burned down her own rented home, vandalized her garage and car, caused the death of her own pets, and even shot herself, all to stage attacks and continue terrorizing Dave and her imagined romantic rival. It was hard to believe, but detectives pressed on. They needed to uncover the full truth. Dave, after learning about the checks, was stunned by how deceitful Liz had been. She had managed to hide all of this for so long. Over 3 years, she had sent more than 15,000 messages, spending the equivalent of 50 to 70 hours a week, effectively a full-time job. She used delayed send timers to maintain an alibi. She did all of this purely out of obsessive jealousy and possessiveness. She couldn't tolerate the idea of sharing Dave with any other woman and did everything she could to win him back, and she had nearly succeeded. Thinking it over, Dave realized Liz could have been responsible for all the stalking. Whenever they were together, the messages slowed dramatically, which was odd. But whenever they broke up, the harassment intensified immediately in huge waves. There was no other explanation. But detectives still needed solid proof. They began carefully questioning. As soon as Liz was discharged from the hospital after the gunshot wound, detectives needed to obtain any information that could lead the investigation to Carrie. During her interrogation, the woman was beside herself. She insisted aggressively that Amy Flora needed to be imprisoned because she was clearly dangerous to society. Liz brought new letters allegedly from Amy, in which the sender continued confessing to killing Carrie and revealed more details, such as claiming that Carrie was murdered in her own car on the passenger side. However, detectives knew this was not true, and Amy had nothing to do with it. The police told Liz that Amy was currently with her ex-husband to observe Liz's reaction, and it produced the expected effect. Liz began losing control and was furious. Officers continued playing along and told her that to charge Amy, they would need something substantial. They pretended to attempt linking Amy to Carrie's disappearance, the crime Liz accused her of. Feeling encouraged, Liz started sharing even more details about the murder. But how could she possibly know them? Detectives managed to locate Carrie's car, which her parents had sold, and obtained permission from the new owners to examine it. During the inspection, the seat covers were removed, and underneath they found a large bloodstain as well as smaller stains under the seats. Analysis confirmed that the DNA belonged to Carrie, who had disappeared 3 years earlier. They also found DNA traces belonging to Liz, who had no legitimate reason to be inside the missing woman's vehicle. This deepened suspicions even further. Later, investigators discovered thousands of photos on Liz's computer. Most were selfies, but one image showed a decomposing foot. Police were able to identify the foot by its tattoos, identical to one of Carrie's. Throughout the long investigation, detectives traced the IP address used to send all the confessional emails and threats from Carrie. It belonged to a man named Gareth, whom Liz had considered her boyfriend for many years. It turned out that after the fire, Liz and her children had moved in with him, and the man had been taking care of them. He had no idea that his beloved was spinning an elaborate web of lies surrounding Carrie's disappearance. A search of Garrett's house found nothing suspicious, but a search of Liz's previous home revealed crucial evidence. Several mobile phones and electronic devices, including a camera that belonged to Carrie. Investigators proved that one of the phones recovered from Liz's home was used to call Carrie's mother on the day Dave had received a message claiming Carrie was at a homeless shelter. The device had a voice-changing app installed. Finally, detectives compared the fingerprints found on the pack of mints in Carrie's car with Liz's fingerprints, and they matched. The level of cold-blooded calculation shown by the perpetrator was astonishing even by criminal standards. For reasons that defied understanding, she had cruelly given hope to Carrie's mother and son with her messages. They believed for a time that Carrie was alive, unwell, and in need of help. Things escalated so far that Carrie's son, Max, 3 years after his mother's disappearance, wrote to the number from which he had last received a message from her. "If this is really you, come back. I want you to be with me at my graduation." Based on all this evidence, Liz was arrested in December 2016. She was charged with first-degree murder, concealment of a corpse, and arson. Her defense team chose a bench trial, meaning her fate will be decided by a judge rather than a jury. The prosecution argued that the defendant stabbed Carrie in November 2012 inside Carrie's own car. Liz had allegedly ambushed her when Carrie left Dave's home and approached her vehicle. At that moment, she attacked. The prosecution presented all evidence pointing toward Liz, but the defense objected. The attorney claimed that Liz's fingerprints on the mint container could have been left earlier, since Liz had been near Dave's house many times and may have crossed paths with Carrie. However, the rest of the evidence contradicted the defense's claims. The phones and IP data clearly indicated that Liz was behind the messages describing intimate details of the murder. Bloodstains found on the front passenger seat, and underneath, it confirmed the location of the crime. And if Liz had not killed Carrie, how could she have known that was where the murder occurred? The defendant also could not explain how an image of Carrie's decomposing foot, identifiable by its tattoo, had ended up on her device. During the trial, another shocking story regarding Liz emerged. Liz once had a small son named Cody. His father, a man with cognitive impairments, adored him. When the boy was found unconscious, the cause of death was ruled as shaken baby syndrome. Cody's father confessed and was sent to prison, although his family firmly believed that Liz herself had killed the child and manipulated the man into confessing. It also came to light that stalking Dave and Carrie was not Liz's first incident of harassment. Years earlier, when the father of Liz's other child broke up with her, she stalked his new girlfriend relentlessly. She continued even after they married, had a child, and eventually divorced. The harassment never stopped. The woman had to move away to find peace. On August 15, 2017, Liz Gollier was found guilty on all counts. Despite overwhelming evidence, she did not admit guilt and showed no remorse whatsoever, not even for the arson. Her attorney appealed to the judge for leniency, asking for no more than 30 years with the possibility of parole after 15. But the prosecution emphasized that Liz displayed no signs of humanity and did not deserve any mercy. Liz was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 20 years for arson. She continues to deny her guilt and is attempting to overturn the verdict, claiming she will keep fighting until the real criminal walking free is behind bars. Carrie's family was never able to recover her body. It has never been found. Above all, her loved ones want to find her remains so they can cremate her and scatter her ashes, as she had wished. If you enjoyed my work, subscribe to the channel, support this video with a like, and let's discuss this case in the comments. I also recommend these other true crime stories. Thank you all and goodbye.